Hi, and welcome to this live reading from Collateral Damage, Mafia Elite, book number 6 by Amy McKinley, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1, Hailey. I'd prepared for the last 2 weeks, and I was ready for the big moment. I flattened a hand on my stomach in an attempt to settle my nerves. I sat in my parked car close to the hospital's entrance, where I would meet my stepfather, nervous because I had to leave just the right impression. I'd taken care with my outfit and not worn my typical jeans with holes at the knees and an oversized sweatshirt. Not this time. My curly hair was tamed as best as possible with a clip at my nape to secure the long mass. I'd even added mascara and a soft pink lipstick to my arsenal of business attire. Pencil skirt, blouse, and matching blazer. That was very unlike me. The heat blasted through the car's vents, and I wished I'd worn boots instead of the ridiculous heels, as it was icy out. January weather in Chicago was hell-frozen over cold. I missed summer. Movement near the entrance caught my eye, and I tensed and reached for the door handle as Mom's second husband closed in on the building. This is it. Alan Mitchell, you have no idea what you're in for. I opened the door, rounded the car, and kept my stepfather in sight as I hurried through this parking lot and across the street toward the doors he was about to enter. My heels crunched over salt and pockets of ice that hadn't yet melted. A shiver raced over me, and my breath formed a small, misty cloud. Alan. I still couldn't call him Dad. He hadn't even slowed, and I gritted my teeth before saying his name again, much louder this time. Alan! He turned. Finally. Then his eyes widened, fixated on something past my shoulder, and my step faltered. Tires screeched, and I froze. My heart skipped a beat. The car skidding behind me could have hit me. Then a door slammed. I took a step forward, looking over my shoulder, only to glimpse a black ski mask. Rough hands grabbed me, and I jerked my body back against a lean chest as I opened my mouth to scream. Chapter 2, Trey. Exhaustion shadowed my every step into the ER. The omnipresent scent of antiseptic enveloped me, and I inhaled its familiarity while heading to the nurse's station for any new information about my patients. Brittany, one of the nurses, waved from down the corridor, quickening her pace the closer she got to me. Dr. La Rosa? Her mouth formed a small O as she tripped on nothing, but her eyes telegraphed excitement. I caught her by the arms, making sure she was steady and not about to fall into me before I removed my hands. Thank you, Brittany. Sandy's sharp tone preceded her as she drew alongside us, having just entered the ER floor. Her shift must have started at the same time as mine. Go check on your patients. Brittany hesitated, her big doe eyes lingering before she reluctantly turned away when I didn't contradict the head nurse's orders. Honestly, exasperation colored Sandy's voice. These young nurses have no shame. It's not that bad. Not that bad! Her head whipped around till her sharp eyes landed on me. When you're not watching, they look at you like you're a piece of meat. I can't even tell you how many times I've had to rearrange the schedule to make sure the worst of your fans aren't on shift when you are. They need to stop planning their weddings with you and focus on their jobs. I offered a sheepish smile, itching to get started on rounds. Sandy was worth her weight in gold, but it wasn't a conversation I liked having. You're the trifecta of all catches, a dangling carrot to the younger ones. She grunted as Peggy called a breathy good morning before going into one of the rooms. And a few of the not-so-young ones, too. I shouldn't have asked, but couldn't help myself. Trifecta? She ticked off her fingers as she listed them. Gorgeous. A prestigious surgeon. And, of course, the Mafia. All that with the added bonus of a surgeon's salary and the substantial Mafia-funded bank account with a dash of white knight and a side of bad boy. And these women are toast. I chuckled. Good thing I've got you on my side. I meant it. She was the most efficient charge nurse in the hospital and kept her staff in line. I didn't need to have a discussion with any of the nurses in question, whose seemingly innocent touches lingered a little too long. She winked, clearly enjoying my discomfort, then stepped away as the phone on the main desk rang, but flung her arm out toward one of the patient rooms. I followed her, needing to check the notes regarding any of the patients who hadn't been discharged yet from the doctor who'd worked the shift before me. Sandy was the only nurse I let in and cared enough for to ask how she was doing. I went about my job with efficiency and a demeanor that didn't invite conversation from the hospital staff unless it was about work. Lately, I'd been like that in most areas of my life. It hadn't always been that way. I joked with my family and did everything I could to keep them from seeing how my heart had just about stopped beating after Teresa, the barista I'd dated from the coffee stop, died. Sophia, my sister, was the only one who knew how deeply her death slayed me, or that I still hadn't recovered from it. Our relationship had been a secret, mostly. I'd wanted to keep her from my world, and all she'd wanted was me. She was pure, happy, innocent, a complete anomaly in my world. No one is innocent. I couldn't get enough of her until someone took her from me, and I hadn't been the same since. Outwardly, everyone but Sophia thought I was fine, and she'd given me the space I'd told her I badly needed. I threw myself into my work. It was what saved me. Jaded, but still passionate about what I did outside of my Mafia responsibilities, I geared up to focus on the patients I would be helping. I had a light shift, and after the chaos with the ambush organized by Guido Amato, one of the New York Mafia underbosses, I needed to regroup and log a few more hours of sleep, preferably without the world imploding with my family or at the hospital where I was staffed. Something was different, and a sixth sense sounded an eternal alarm that snapped me from my thoughts. My instincts flared. A surge of adrenaline shot through me, erasing the indifference and fatigue. My gaze darted around the busy floor as I catalogued everything out of place. It was in the silence as the staff went about their jobs, in the absence of triage. No codes were called. The air was heavy, a sense of somberness significant in the lack of smiles or gossip at the nurse's station, and the pallor of Sandy's face as she hung up the phone. The pen in her hand shook before she set it down. Her big blue eyes were devoid of all teasing when they met mine, which was highly unusual. I slid a hand inside my open lab coat and around the back where I'd tucked my gun in the waistband of my pants. "Sandy," I approached her slowly, noting the tremble in her lower lip. "What's the problem this morning?" "Mr. Mitchell asked that you see him immediately." Her voice cracked. Alan Mitchell ran the hospital. He didn't deserve the promotion, but his marriage to Vanessa Carmichael had afforded him the honor, as her family owned the hospital among other businesses, including Chicago's prized professional hockey team. I took the elevator up to the top floor where the executive staff offices were. Once off the elevator, I headed down the hall toward Alan's door. 2 Chicago police officers exited his office, and I nodded to them. Their eyes were wary with recognition, but they returned the greeting. Alan's door was open. Not bothering to knock, I let myself in, then towered over his slumped form at his desk. I waited, not saying a word. Being summoned by him wasn't something I would typically respond to, but Sandy's reaction had propelled me to see what the issue was. Seeing cops leave made me curious. Slowly, he raised his head. I took in the disheveled hair that, on an average day, was smoothed to perfection, the red-rimmed eyes, and the loosened tie. I stood silently, waiting. "Trey." He cleared his throat, then swiped a hand through his hair, mussing it further. "I know we've had our differences." I grinned, couldn't help it. He threw a lot of shade in my direction without outright calling me out. I knew his arrogant type. He thought he was better than everyone else because of his position, and he'd married into money. I wasn't impressed. "Yes, well," a spark of annoyance flashed across his drawn features, tightening them at my response. "Today, I was to meet my daughter, to talk about having her spearhead the hospital fundraiser this spring." He inhaled through his nose, taking a moment to compose his suddenly misty eyes. "She never made it." The news hit me hard, but I kept my face expressionless. "That's why the police were here?" He nodded, his forehead pinched with deep lines. "I'll have to go to the station soon to give a statement, but I fear she won't be found in time." "Is she dead?" That was what it seemed he had been leading up to. "I have things to do, Alan. Stop playing games and tell me what you're talking about without the melodrama." A dark flash filled his eyes, then disappeared so quickly that most would have discounted it. I filed that away for later. Whatever was going on, he was hiding something. I was almost inside the hospital entrance when Hailey crossed from the parking lot. She'd called out to me, and I turned just as a white van pulled up behind her. A man dressed in black and wearing a ski mask jumped out and grabbed her. He threw her into the back and drove away before I could get to her. The Carmichael family were one-percenters. I guessed that the abduction was about money. What does this have to do with me? It didn't. I was curious why he'd told me anything, especially since he'd made it so evident that I shouldn't be on staff at the hospital. His snobby disposition had telegraphed his opinion loud and clear. I'd let it go, not caring enough to put him in his place. Despite his executive position, he was a peon, and he didn't do any actual work. No one took him seriously. I want you to find her. I don't think so. I smirked at the ridiculousness of his request, even though I knew damn well I would find her, but without his help. Let the cops do their job. I pivoted to leave. Wait. I stopped, rested my shoulder against the door jamb, and watched as he froze in a half-standing position behind his desk, desperation pulling his hawk-like aristocratic features taut. Your abductor called me with a ransom demand. They want $10 million for Hailey's safe return. We have 72 hours. No police. That was a longer time than I would have expected. She's already dead then, as you've involved the cops. They were only here because one of the security guards witnessed Hailey's abduction. I haven't shown the police the security tape. I told them there was a glitch and nothing recorded. A sheen of sweat gathered along his upper lip, and the killer instinct in me honed to laser focus. Who else knows about your little misdemeanor, Alan? No one, I swear. And Hailey's mother, have you told her what happened on your watch? The same darkness from before clouded his eyes for a second, then was gone again. Alan gave a single shake of his head. It piqued my curiosity enough that I entertained looking at the security footage. Show me. He slid his computer over, then pressed the play button. The recording was of the area in front of the hospital's entrance. The camera angle captured the space beneath the overhang and toward the parking lot. A young woman hurried through the lot. Something unexpected stirred in my heart at the sight of her, the memory of when we'd first met. I resisted rubbing at the odd sensation in my chest. I couldn't look away from the recording as she called to Alan, who had paused beneath the entrance's overhang when she spoke to him a second time. He turned, his back to the camera, as a white van barreled down the road, then screeched to a stop inches from where she stood. A tall, lean man with broad shoulders hopped out. Dressed all in black with a ski mask covering his face, he ran to the woman, whose back was still to him. As she looked over her shoulder, he jerked her body back into his, and I tensed in response. Both his arms wound around her tiny waist. She kicked out, scrambling for purchase to get away. A stiletto fell off her foot, and she opened her mouth to scream. He tightened his hold around her and her lungs. From her expression, the air was limited, and sound must have failed her. As they moved toward the back of the van, he lifted her inches from the ground, and she kicked wildly despite being secured against his chest. One arm loosened, and he wrenched open the van's back door. Alan shifted slightly. One stepped forward, a hand outstretched. The man flung a hood over the woman's head before tossing her into the back. Doors slammed just as the security guard barreled from the hospital's entrance. He was too late. Hailey's attacker took his seat behind the wheel. Odd. The tires spun before they found purchase, and the vehicle lurched forward. Soon it was out of sight. Alan had barely moved from his spot under the overhang. I paused the video, then rewound it to when her attacker lifted her, then tossed her into the back. She stopped fighting, only for a second, but it was enough to stand out. I let it play out, then went back to the scene again. When the recording ended, I couldn't hold back the memory of how I'd first met Hailey. I'd been at a party with Marco and Sophia, who had gone to get a refill on drinks. Nico hadn't been able to attend. While I appreciated that my family had accompanied me to the hospital's leukemia fundraiser, all I wanted to do was go home, sleep, and forget why my heart hurt. I leaned against the wall as the clink of heels vied with conversation, and an edgy awareness danced over my skin. Every muscle in my body tightened in reaction, and I scanned the dance floor for its cause. Everything paused as I spotted a stunning woman in a black satin evening gown. A high slit in her dress revealed a toned golden leg, and diamonds dripped from her ears. I recognized her. How could I not have? Her mother, Vanessa Carmichael, owned the hospital. My vision tunneled as the temptress in black satin and diamonds headed my way. All the depressing thoughts that had taken residence in my mind, urging me to leave, fled as she crossed the edge of the dance floor in strappy 3-inch silver heels. When she was about a foot from me, our gazes collided, and she faltered as an electrical current passed between us. I angled my body toward her and extended my hand. I don't believe we've been officially introduced. I'm Trey La Rosa. She placed hers in mine, and a jolt of desire buzzed through me. Hailey Carmichael, and I know your sister. My sister's been holding out on me. Her full red lips curved into a smile, and I stepped closer. Would you like to dance? She answered with a light nod, and I pulled her close and stepped onto the dance floor to a haunting and evocative violin concerto. Her skin was soft beneath my hands as we swayed together, her slender body enticing me to press her tight to mine. But we were at a party where there were too many sets of eyes on us. Long lashes lifted, and I found myself drowning in a sea of shimmering gemstone green. I haven't seen you at the hospital fundraisers before tonight. Why is that? A flash of something flitted across her face, maybe annoyance. It piqued my interest and made me wonder whether she was there with someone, or if the irritation had to do with her family. I was away at school, but I'm sure I'll be attending more if my mother has anything to do with it. Her voice dropped to a whisper, and intelligence spiked with mischief sparkled through her expressive eyes. Truth be told, this isn't my scene. I grinned, enjoying myself for the first time that evening. The pompous gathering of socialites or raising money for a cause? She chuckled, shaking her head. Her thick, wavy hair bounced from side to side. The cause is not the issue, but I would much rather simply write a check. I couldn't blame her. The night was long, and we still had to get through the speeches. One song turned into 5 as we talked and danced, cocooned in one another's arms. When the song ended and the band announced they were taking a break, I led her off the dance floor to where my sister was waiting for us. Hailey! Sophia drew her into a hug. How is it that you've never introduced us? My hand never left the small of Hailey's back, the contact somehow grounding me, chasing away the emotions that had plagued me before. Sophia shrugged, then took a sip of her champagne. I meant to. I'm surprised you haven't run into us having coffee. An unwanted jolt of pain pierced through the bubble that Hailey had managed to gift me with that one word. Where? Sophia flinched. Hailey answered instead. At the coffee stop. Teresa. The spell Hailey had cast over me shattered, and reality crashed into my world once more. That was where Teresa had worked. Then she dated me. Then she died. My hand fell away, and I took a step back, crushing guilt defining my actions. How could I have forgotten, if even only for a few moments? I turned on my heel and walked away, my former girlfriend's ghost haunting my every step, along with the phantom sound of Teresa's infectious laughter. In my peripheral vision, I saw Sophia wrap an arm around Hailey, whose face had registered acute rejection as they made a hasty retreat out of the gala. It was for the best. I clenched my jaw and jerked free of the memory, refocusing on the screen in front of me and the overwhelming need to help Hailey. The abduction had happened in a matter of seconds, but I knew seeing her again had altered my life somehow. I didn't like it. I hadn't been ready for her then, and I doubted I was now. Alan's hand shook as he pressed another button, switching to a different camera angle, and I watched the entire thing all over again. I paused the video. I went back to the first one with a few clicks, found a frame that worked for what I wanted, then enlarged a section to see her face. My gaze crawled over her stunning face, slender figure, and dark hair. You look nothing alike. I'd done my homework on him a long time ago and knew enough. Both mother and daughter had kept their surname, and Alan had attempted to manipulate my emotions by saying his daughter was missing. Alan and Hailey weren't related by blood. Couldn't help needling him. I doubted he had much of anything to do with how she was raised. His arrogant, I've got a silver spoon stuck up my ass demeanor had nothing on the captivating woman with features I knew would haunt my dreams again tonight. I hardly see how it matters whether we look alike or not, Alan bristled, clearly unaware that I'd met Hailey in the past. She's my stepdaughter, but that hardly matters. We are family. While I was curious about the woman, I had no desire to do anything for her stepfather unless I got something in return. He pursed his lips, his body equally tense. Will you help find her? No, leave it to the police. I turned to go. What? They said not to. Alan ran a shaky hand over his face. You have to find her before the time limit runs out. They said... He trailed off, his face going sickly gray. Silence hung between us as I paused by the door. Desperation oozed from him. Again, I turned to leave. Wait, he sneered. I'll give you a seat on the board. If I wanted that, I would already have it. I shook my head. I was going to help her, preferably without his knowledge. I glanced at the computer. Then again, he could believe I wanted a seat on the board if it kept my motivations hidden. Make a copy of the security footage now. I want to take it back with me. You'll help? He slumped back, relief slackening his features. Yes. I said nothing as he fumbled to insert a USB drive and copy the 2 videos. He shook his head. I just want the safe return of my stepdaughter. But nothing can trace back to me. If you kill the kidnappers at will, this needs to be clean. No deaths. I raised my eyebrows and Alan's face flushed. You took an oath. I laughed. He knew who I was and where my loyalties lay. Alan leaned forward, clutching the edge of his desk. Promise me, no deaths. I closed the distance between us, flattened my hands on the mahogany surface, and loomed over him. Be careful how you talk to me, Alan. You won't like the repercussions. I held his gaze long enough to convey what I would do to him should he press me further. Make it happen with the board, and I'll see what I can do about your daughter. A glance at the screen showed the recording was copied. I ejected the drive and pocketed it, patting Alan's cheek before I left his office. I meant what I said. I would look into the situation. He wasn't counting on my finding out what he wasn't telling me, though. There was something very off about the footage of Hailey's abduction.